Yes, people. So it's officially March. February is out of here. And before I move forward with the next stage of the journey, I thought it would make sense to actually stop for a moment and look back at what happened. Because when I started this whole Dad Bod to discipline thing, the idea was actually pretty simple. Walk 5 miles a day, hit somewhere between 10,000 and 15,000 steps, do it every single day throughout February. No gym membership, no complicated training program, just walking. Now, that might sound simple on paper, but the reality is totally different. Think about it. February in the UK is cold, it's miserable, it's wet, and trying to build daily habits in those kind of conditions turns out to be a lot harder than it sounds. But over the course of the month, something interesting started to happen. What started as a fitness challenge slowly became something else. It became a lesson in discipline. Week 1, the experiment phase. Week 1 was basically that, an experiment. I had no idea if I could actually keep it up. The goal was to walk 5 miles a day, but realistically the target was just to show up. By the end of the week, the numbers, 99,619 steps, which works out to roughly 50 miles walked in the first 7 days. At that point, my body hadn't quite realized what it signed up for. Everything still felt new, everything still felt exciting, but something else started to happen during those early walks. Walking created thinking space, no distractions, no screens, just miles in time to think. And that turned out to be important because those quiet walks started to reveal things about my habits and about myself. Week 2, that was the reality phase. Things got real. This is where my body started to fight back. Calves were burning, back was aching, shoulders were sore for some strange reason. And the February weather definitely wasn't helping. But by the end of week 2, my numbers dropped. 86,127 steps, roughly 43 miles walked. But the real story wasn't the numbers, it was the mental battle. This was the week where motivation had disappeared. There was even an experiment with treadmills that went horribly wrong. I tried to walk indoors to avoid the cold and ended up getting launched off the treadmill, straight into a wall. Not my proudest moment, by all accounts. That incident left me sore, battered, and questioning whether or not this whole thing was sustainable. Then came the lowest point in the entire month. Day 12, 6,093 steps. I got home from work, exhausted, decided to take a little rest for a minute and fell asleep. When I woke up, it was too late to recover that day. At the time, it felt like failure. But looking back at it now, that mattered. That moment mattered because the next day changed something. Instead of trying to push through alone, I asked for help. And the following day, I ended up hiking the Wrekin with my oldest son. And that reminded me that this challenge didn't have to be about grinding through the same streets every night. It showed me that it could also be about experiences, about being outdoors and doing things with people who matter. So along the journey, I enlisted help. I got a few people to help me out. Week 3 was the adaptation phase. This is where things started to shift. By this point, my body had started to adapt. The walking didn't quite feel as brutal anymore. And mentally, something else started happening. It was beginning to become a habit. It was beginning to be a habit. By the end of the week, 3 numbers jumped significantly. 116,096 steps. That's about 58 miles walked. The biggest week of the entire month. But the real change wasn't physical. It happened during one particular walk, a cold night, wet weather, no audio books left on Spotify, subscription time limited. Didn't feel like listening to music, so I just walked and travelled with my thoughts. And somewhere during that walk, I realised something. The little voices in my head, the ones that normally push for sugar, alcohol, shortcuts, they weren't as loud anymore. I actually realised I could ignore them. Salads had started to feel like actual meals as opposed to a side dish. My sugar cravings became easier to bypass, and alcohol didn't feel as much of a necessary crutch. Even the walking started to feel a bit therapeutic, almost like a reward. That's when I knew that something had shifted. Week 4 was the identity shift phase, I guess. My numbers stayed strong. 109,061 steps, which is about 54 miles. But the real challenge in week 4 wasn't physical. It was all psychological. Because when you get close to completing something, a strange thought starts popping in your head. And for me, it was, what if I actually finish this? There were several times during that week I thought about stopping, deleting the videos, not uploading the rest, pretending the whole challenge didn't happen. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Because by that point, something had already changed. I liked who I was becoming. One moment that really summed up what happened was day 27. I had a craving for a Magnum, you know how that goes already. Normally, I would have just drove to the shop. But this time, I made a deal with myself. If I wanted a drink, I had to walk for it. Now, that deal turned into a 4.5 mile walk just in the rain to go get myself a Maggie. But by that time, I'd got home. 15,253 steps in the bag, almost 7 miles total for the day. And that Magnum never tasted so good. But the important part wasn't the drink, it was the decision. Trust me, everything's changing. By the end of the month, the numbers: 410,903 steps, which works out to about 205 miles walked in just 1 month. For context, I work 12 hours a day, and my January's total was 205 and change. So my activity literally doubled, but the physical changes weren't the most surprising part. The unexpected results from doing this over the course of February, I noticed a few things. My breathing became easier. My energy level stabilized. I felt like I had a little bit more. My food choices just improved anyway. Do you know what I mean? I started opting out of things. Alcohol dropped significantly anyway. And the benefits of that was the financial changes. Less money spent on takeaways, less money spent on drink. Random impulse purchases. I weren't really doing it. I was actually, my bank was building muscle too. But the biggest change was mental. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was developing discipline. Not because I forced it, but simply because I kept showing up, even on the days I didn't want it. The question is, what happens next? Because we're moving into March, and this journey isn't stopping. Walking continues, hiking continues, but I'm also going to introduce something new. I'm going to use a skipping rope. I'm going to try and see what happens when I add a few minutes a day. Because the goal now isn't just about counting steps and looking less like Cleveland. It's about building a lifestyle that keeps my body moving and keeps my mind clear. This journey started as a simple challenge. Walk 5 minutes a day. But what it revealed was something much bigger. Discipline isn't built through perfect days. It's built through showing up. And I'm going to keep showing up for you guys. catch up with you soon. Peace.